So I think we could start now, and I want to say good evening. I would like to welcome you warmly to our fourth international webinar, which is a part of the European project European Lived Culture Connects. This evening we will be guided by Lawrence Thorne from Praxis Europe in Birmingham. With the wonderful pictures, he will present us examples of the colorful world of lived traditions in the United Kingdom. I give the word to Lawrence. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. Again, I'd like to welcome everybody. Thank you for attending this online seminar. It's very nice to be able to present cultures and traditions that I'm familiar with in my own city, in my own country. So, and it's been very nice to see everybody else's so far as well. Just before I start, I will do my absolute best to be as clear and as slow as possible, just so that everybody can understand what I'm saying. As a native speaker, I know we have the tendency to be very fast. So if anybody does not understand anything that I say, or if I say something too fast, please say in the chat and I will make sure that I will correct that for you. Okay, so I will begin. So to begin with, the first few sections of this PowerPoint will be about cultures in and around Birmingham itself, where Praxis Europe is based, and some of you have visited as well. And then I'm also going to look at a few other traditions which are UK-wide, or if not UK-wide, outside of the Birmingham area, but interesting and sort of quite unique celebrations and events. So we will begin with the Chinese New Year in Birmingham. Every year, due to the amount of Chinese citizens and Chinese immigrants living in the Birmingham area, Birmingham hosts the largest Chinese New Year celebrations in the UK. London has many more, but they are separate events that happen around the city. Birmingham's are all centralised and they're all organised into a massive, huge display of Chinese culture. So this year was the year of the rat, which means that everything was rat themed. And usually around 100,000 people attend these events, but this year only around 30,000 people attended the events, which I think was due to the virus that's been going around. There's been much more muted celebrations, and the weather has been appalling over here. So Chinese New Year has been celebrated in Birmingham for, I've put over 100 years here. It's closer to around 200 years from where the first Chinese people arrived in the city. Obviously, they were much smaller back then, and also it wasn't quite as welcome as it is today. It used to be suppressed by the British government and the Birmingham Council, but happily now we've moved to a more enlightened time so that everybody can join in happily with the celebrations. As you can see from some of these photos, this middle photograph here is from in front of the Birmingham Town Hall, or City Hall as it is now. And that's a huge event. That's on the actual day of Chinese New Year, where there are theatre and circus performers who perform on raised platforms, and they use ropes and other circus equipment to put on a really interesting display. On the right hand side is the Birmingham Bullring Bull. So I will talk about the Birmingham Bullring later, but the bull is essentially the symbol of Birmingham, and especially the city centre, and every year it is dressed up for Chinese New Year, as you can see, in a different outfit each year. So events happen all over the city. The most spectacular on the ground level are the Chinese dragon dances, in which up to, I think I've seen over 30 people before with one of these dragons. They can be over about 30 to 40 meters long in some instances. And there is a very traditional dance, a circular dance, that is performed by the performers, and they're not all Chinese either, which is nice. The whole city gets involved. People from all sorts of backgrounds, culturally and ethnically, become involved. Also, lots of Birmingham schools, especially the younger schools, the infant schools, up until the ages of 10, get involved, and they all learn about Chinese culture, and they also sometimes join in the parades and join into the events that happen. I haven't got any photographs of this because obviously it involves children, and the photography for these events are quite monitored by people. So moving on to St. Patrick's Day. So St. Patrick, as I'm sure you know, is the patron saint of Ireland. And again, there was a lot of Irish immigration to Birmingham when the canals were being built around 250 to 300 years ago. So there has always been a big Irish population, especially in the Digbeth area of Birmingham, and there have always been celebrations as well for St. Patrick's Day. But since 1952, there has been an official parade which was paid for by Birmingham City Council, and that can get, and everyone, again, the city stops for this during the day. The main road in and out of Birmingham is closed, so that a parade, including all sorts of dignitaries like the mayor and the local member of parliament, and sometimes higher members of parliament as well, will attend. Just on this slide, the photographs show the Birmingham Bull again, which gets dressed up for pretty much every occasion in Birmingham. So as we can see, he's been dressed up in a stereotypical Irish costume. And the other photo is of the parade in 2019. It hasn't happened this year yet. It's on the 17th of March. So these are last year's images still. And it just shows how many people line the streets, very busy streets, to join in and watch the parade. And last year it rained very heavily, but that didn't deter the parade from happening, and everybody still showed up. But I think that's just because we're used to the weather by now. So on this slide, you can see that it's not just Irish people who get involved. On the left-hand side, we've got the Scots Guard from Glasgow, who do the parade with their classic bagpipes and their classic kilts. In the middle photo, we can see the biking community in Birmingham who also join in. So because Birmingham is such an industrial city, there are huge workers and ex-workers unions, each who have a different specialty, as it were. So there are massive motorbike clubs in Birmingham, and they take part every year. And on the right, we have a newer addition to the parades. These are people dressed as characters from the TV series Peaky Blinders, which is about criminal gangs in Birmingham from the 1920s, which has become, I think it is the most watched drama series on the BBC. So Birmingham is absolutely mad for the Peaky Blinders at the moment, and you can't go to any event without seeing someone dressed up in the classic long jacket and peaked caps, as you can see here on the photographs. So most of the people who join in the parade are ordinary members of the public who have paid a small entrance fee. So this entrance fee goes to different charities in Birmingham. Each year there's a different one nominated who will receive the money. And here's another photo of the parade van going through, and photographs of people congregating just before the parade happens. As you can see, it's very rainy, very wet weather, but everyone still has a smile on their face. And as I say on this slide, the government has now pulled the funding away from this event and the local council. So it is now going to be completely privately funded from now on, using no taxpayers' money as it used to. This just means that there is a higher entrance fee for this year's parade, and I think it will still continue to happen for many years from now. So the Birmingham German market is one of the most famous events in Birmingham. People travel from all over the UK to attend. The Birmingham market is from Frankfurt in Germany, obviously. So it's actually, rather than being a British version of a German market, it is an authentic Frankfurt German market, which travels with all of their stalls, all of their produce, all of the beers and wines and food are all brought across from Germany to Birmingham, and the market is then there for a whole month. This has been going on for nearly 20 years now, and it is the largest market, German market in the UK. Again, London has lots of them, but they are a lot smaller, a lot more local. Birmingham, again, has the largest collection in the very centre of the city. But this is not the first time. This is not a recent tradition. Because of Birmingham's notoriety as a market town historically, there are paperworks in libraries which can trace German traders in Germany all the way back. The earliest is 1393, so around 800 years ago, when it's been reported that traders from Austria and other areas of what was the Holy Roman Empire at the time, of German traders. So this new market is actually just a modern equivalent of inter-country trade, which started hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So again, everybody working at the market is German, and as you can see, there are traditional hanging bratwurst grills, which are active all the way through the months. It's very popular, the German market, as there are lots of things on sale that you can't buy in England because we don't produce them and we don't stock them. So many people will plan a trip a long time in advance to visit the German markets to get some authentic German items and food. And from my own personal experience as well, I was in Berlin this Christmas, and I attended the German markets in Berlin, and it really is very, very authentic in Birmingham to the way that the markets are in Germany. They are almost the same, just with a few differences. As you can see, you can buy traditional German sweets and traditional German I'm not sure what you call those, traditional German sculptures and statues just for inside the home. And last year, over 5 million people visited the market over a month. So just a big number to give you sort of a sense of how busy these markets are. So Birmingham, again, is also famous for its canals. Every Birmingham school child will tell you that Birmingham has got more canals than Venice. The canal network was built by the Irish citizens who travelled over, so the canals are really linked with the St Patrick's Day parades. I think there's over 45 miles of canals within a sort of 1 square mile radius, just to show you how much of the city is actually built on industrial canals. And every year there is the Canal Festival. It's actually very small, really. It's only in one canal basin, but there are shops. There's a floating theatre. There's also a floating cinema screen, which is very interesting. And every year people will travel, especially canal users will travel to Birmingham to take part in the canal. There's also a competition for the best canal boat as well. So the canals are also home to some of the oldest buildings in Birmingham. A lot of the city is now metal and glass, but as you can see from these images, some of the traditional industrial style mills and housing is still preserved around the water areas of Birmingham. So the top right hand photo is of the Canal House, which is one of the last surviving canal depot buildings. It's made entirely from wood apart from the first floor, and it's a very interesting building that I think it has a restaurant in it, but also hosts tours of traditional Birmingham industry. So there are workshops of people using traditional industrial methods to create watches and jewellery, as Birmingham is very famous for its jewellery. They make shoes, they make chains, all in the Victorian and older method of creating these objects. So on that note, I will talk about the Black Country Living Museum. So first of all, the Black Country is an area just north of Birmingham. It's actually mostly Wolverhampton, which is another town just north. It's called the Black Country because a lot of the old buildings have been blackened by soot and tar from smoke in the air, and also from coal fumes, because the area is very prolific as a coal mining area. So this is Lichfield Cathedral, just on the left-hand side, which is a 900-year-old building. And as you can see, the top of the spires have been burned and dirtied to be black. And that is where the Black Country gets its name from. The Black Country Living Museum itself is a very interesting attraction, again just north of Birmingham, where what they did was, when some of the buildings in Birmingham city centre were going to be demolished in the 1960s to make way for newer tower blocks and newer city buildings, they were going to be demolished. And what a group of preservationists or building savers did was they took down these buildings brick by brick, very carefully, transported them outside of Birmingham city centre, and rebuilt them again on the site of an old coal mine. So all of the buildings have been moved about 25 miles outside of Birmingham and restructured on the outskirts of the city. And they did this with, yes, Ruth, it was very tough. I think it took around 5 years from the planning stage to the building stage, just for some of the simpler buildings. There have been shops, houses, there's a church, there's even a school, and there's even a traditional gypsy circus in the middle. And there's also this bottom right-hand photograph is of kilns or ovens which were used to make bricks. And this photograph doesn't do them justice, actually. They are around 40 meters tall, and they have a huge, there's a huge chamber under the arch, which over 200,000 bricks could be made at any one time. And again, there's also traditional workshops, which every 15 minutes there will be a demonstration of a different, I say ancient, a different outdated industrial technique. So this man is creating chains. So what he's done, rather than using a machine, is he's got a tube of metal and he's superheated it until it's glowing, and then this photo shows him hammering it into place. And obviously these chains were very important for the shipping industry, which was our main industry in the UK for hundreds and hundreds of years. So Birmingham was a main supplier of these goods for ships, and then further on it was aeroplanes, cars and motorbikes. So now we come to the bullring markets. So the bullring markets, although the buildings themselves are not, the market itself is essentially the eldest part of Birmingham. It's around 750 to 800 years. There is a precise date of 1154, but historians think that that's just the earliest mention and not actually the earliest time when markets were in Birmingham. So the Birmingham started off just as a market, and then the rest of the city was built around this central market, which is why the Bullring Markets and now the Bullring Shopping Centre are in the very centre of the city, the very nucleus of Birmingham itself. Yes, Ruth. Chain production was it was quite famous in Birmingham. I think there are a few other places which were more so. I think Portsmouth is very, very famous for rope and chain building. Birmingham is more famous for its car manufacturing and industry, and its bicycle as well. Okay, so back to the Bullring markets. So the markets are literally in the same place as they were. Obviously, they're much larger now, but it's one of the only places in the UK that can be genuinely said that the same thing has happened there for around 700 years or more, as I say. So there is almost anything at these markets. There is fresh produce, fish, meat, there's vegetables as well, but there's also, as you can see in these photographs, there's a lot of cloth or haberdashery trading. There's also cosmetics, there's phone shops, there are clothes stalls as well, not just cloth stalls. And it really is one of those places where people say, if you go there, you can get anything from anywhere around the world in Birmingham markets. And that's especially true now there's the large commercial shopping centre as well. So we'll move on. So those first instances were in and around Birmingham. So now I'm moving on to Bonfire Night, or Guy Fawkes Night, which is a UK-wide celebration. So Bonfire Night dates back to the reign of James I. He was the first king after Elizabeth I, and during his reign, on the 5th of November, some Catholic aggravators, because England had outlawed Catholicism at the time, so it was illegal to be a Catholic in the 16th century. They plotted to destroy the Westminster Palace and the Parliament that happened in there. So that's not the modern Parliament, which you see now in London, but it was in Westminster Palace. And the plan was to use gunpowder to destroy the whole building and kill the king and all of his advisors and lords. Obviously, this didn't happen, and the plot was discovered about 2 hours before the gunpowder was meant to explode. So it's a nationwide celebration of a very sort of close shave with a national disaster in the 16th century. So every year since then, except for a couple of years, there have been huge bonfire night celebrations which celebrate the life of the kings and queens of England and celebrate that the plot did not work. So what happens is, around the country, people will build bonfires, which are just huge fires with lots of scrap wood and old wood. And a model of Guy Fawkes, almost like a big puppet or waxwork, if you will, of Guy Fawkes is made. Often this is paraded through towns and cities, and then at the end it is burned. And this reflects how Guy Fawkes, who was the main person in the gunpowder plot, was caught and executed by the British government. Obviously, we're not as macabre or brutal anymore about it, but it's still celebrated with quite light-hearted firework displays. So there's a town in Shropshire called Lewes. This is in the south of England, and every year they have what is the most spectacular Guy Fawkes Night celebrations. It's a huge town-wide parade, which pretty much everybody gets involved in. As you can see, everybody coordinates what they wear. In the left-hand side, this shows the moment that they have a silence in the parade. And then on the right-hand side, that is the effigy of Guy Fawkes that will later be burned. But as well as being very traditional, the town of Lewes is very contemporary as well. So they bring new traditions. They have lots of interesting and exciting puppets, and people dress up. It's almost like the Day of the Dead festival in Mexico. And they parade through the town of Lewes. And as you can see from this picture on the left, again, thousands of people turn up from all over the UK if they're able to, because Lewes is known everywhere as being the absolute best. And they also are very political and satirical as well, as you can see. Last year they had a big puppet of our Prime Minister with another minister, so that's Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg, and that was paraded through the town, and unfortunately they weren't allowed to burn this at the end, even though that was the intention, as this was seen as insensitive. But it just shows how up to date they keep this old lived tradition. It really is lived, because it doesn't just stay the same, it evolves as the world evolves. So the St Albans Day Parade is a interesting event. So St Albans is a town just north of London. It's a Roman town, and it's the site of St Alban's burial place. And St Alban is the first saint who was a British person. So the story is that St Alban was a British Roman soldier, and he was commanded to execute a Christian priest. He refused to do so, which also led to his own execution. But he was found to be, or rumoured to be, in possession of magical powers, and these include resurrection and acts of God. So he was to be beheaded, but as that happened, the eyes supposedly fell out of the executioner's head, and that is the miracle that was attributed to him, and that is how he became a saint. And every year they have a huge parade in the town. As you can see, there's St Alban's eyes in the top right hand corner. Here's St Alban on the bottom left, with angels and Roman soldiers around him. And the top left image again just shows how many people attend this famous UK-wide event. So May Day is an important day across the whole of Europe. I think every country has its own May Day celebrations, as well as the Americans as well. So May Day in the UK is celebrated with Morris and Maypole dancing. These are very ancient pagan dances which have been performed in this country for over 2,000 years. Obviously they have changed slightly, they've been updated, and also every region of the UK has a different type of Maypole and Morris dancing. These photographs are from Derby city centre, and as you can see, it's quite a small event. A lot of these events now happen in smaller towns and cities outside of the large cities in England and Scotland and Wales. So the Maypole dancing is where there is a pole which is normally in a park, or a village green, as it's known in the centre of many small towns and villages. And these poles are permanent fixtures, and every year on the 1st of May, which is May Day, local people will dress up in traditional costumes and outfits, and they will dance around in circles around the Maypole. And some of these Maypoles, there's one in the name of the town escapes me at the moment, but it's in the south, and it's over 300 years old, and it's been used every year without fail. Okay, so St George, like St Patrick, is the patron saint of England. The famous story is he fought and killed a dragon on a hill in the south of England. And every year there are often parades and events. So these photographs were taken at Rest Park, which is a big country house in the south of England again. It's the 23rd of April every year, and it's very traditional for reenactors to dress in full suits of armour and another actor to dress as a dragon, and they will have a fight, of which obviously St George is victorious. There's also large parades, as you can see. The school children again become involved. Local dignitaries and military personnel get involved. There's bands as well, often traditional British brass bands. And again, the bottom right-hand photograph just shows how many people really get involved in these events. So there's a parade in London which has been known to get over 2 million people on a good year, although that hasn't happened for many years now. And St George's Day only happens in England. Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland all have their own patron saints, which they celebrate on different days. Okay, so I have finished. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching this PowerPoint. It's been very enjoyable. Yeah, and I hope you've all learned something. Even if you're from the UK, I hope you've learned something that you didn't know before.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Lawrence. It was really very, very interesting. And it was not the common things we usually know as tourists, for example, directly in London or Westminster or something like that. So it was something really new what you introduced, and that was very interesting. Thank you very much.
That's great. Yeah, it's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
So are there any questions to Lawrence or some comments? Any comments?
So I think Richard. Oh yeah. Ah, okay.
Yes. I'll probably be there this year too, yes.
And I think the May Day is celebrated nearly all over the world, but in different ways. Is it? It is the start of the spring or something. It is a very ancient.
I think.
Yes, it's pagan. Yes, it's very, very ancient druids, isn't it? Who started that? I think.
I think Andrea, you make a photo reportage in Weinheim for the springtime.
Yeah, there are different celebrations for springtime, which can be dragged back to pagan times. That's especially the May Day.
Yes, Andrea.
Yeah.
It's earlier.
And so, yes, Cornelia is typing. In Switzerland, you have also such pagan traditions, very old traditions. In Switzerland, it is a political event. Only a political event, Cornelia, or also culture or tradition? No, on Carnival, the following Wednesday, it is called Ash Wednesday. This is a political event in Germany.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you know Ash Wednesday, Lawrence?
Ash Wednesday, yeah, isn't that part of the Easter celebrations? That's a religious celebration in the UK, I think.
It's the first day of the Lent before Easter, as far as I
Yes, that's it. Yes, first day of Lent. Yeah.
The 1st of May. Okay. Yeah. So.
So we have recorded the webinar, and now on YouTube you will find all 4 international webinars that we held in the European project, and you can you can share the link, or you can have a look.
You can watch it again. Yeah. It's for workers, yeah.
Yeah. The 1st of May was founded by the Organization of Workers.
Yeah, this is the erste. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Then.
Okay, then thank you very much for coming, and especially thank you very much, Lawrence, for this interesting presentation. And
you're very welcome. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, then we say bye-bye and have a good evening. Thank you.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you for watching.